XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. The MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. The MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
Hello everyone, welcome to Pro EV Live. Thank you very much for joining us today for our stream with Canon, talking about the incredibly exciting new EOS R5 and R6. For most of this stream, by the way, this is going to be assuming that you all know quite a lot about the cameras. I'm assuming that most people out there have watched it. I've already watching loads of questions coming in the chat. So we are going to do a brief little presentation just in case there's anyone sitting there at home who has not seen these cameras yet. And we'll get onto the questions after that. But I have seen all the questions coming in. We are going to talk about them. We're going to have a very good, frank, honest discussion with Canon about the ins and outs of the camera, what it can do, what it can't do. Let's absolutely pick it to pieces. Before we do that, I just want to bring your all attention to the website. So this is ProEV's website, obviously, and the cameras are up here. The reason that I thought I would do this to start the stream off is that what people might not know is that Canon are running a 0% interest deal. So if you are thinking of buying either of these cameras or actually a bunch of lenses as well, they have a limited 0% interest-free credit deal going on. So that runs until I think it's the end of September, so it's basically the pre-order window. So if you pre-order the camera, basically you can apply to get 0% interest-free over 2 years, which is a fantastic deal. So if you want that offer, pick up the phone or drop us an email and talk to the sales team directly. We can organize all of that for you. They've also got a deal with a free EF to RF mount adapter when you register for CPS Live. CPS, their sort of support scheme. So if you register for that, you can get a mount adapter, which is very good because obviously that means you can put all your EF glass on the RF system. So let's introduce our guest for today. If you've been watching these streams, you already know her, but let me introduce Mehdia. Thank you so much for joining us, Mehdia. How are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, thanks for having me again, talking about all new exciting products.
I imagine you've been fairly busy for the last 2 days, right?
It has been extremely busy, especially yesterday. It was a long, busy day for all of us.
Yep.
But when you have exciting products to talk about, it's not a problem for any of us. So.
I mean, you launched so many products yesterday because there's the 2 cameras, which are 2 huge cameras for you guys. Like this is the biggest launch you've had for a long time. It is. And then you had all the lenses as well.
Yeah. So we had the 2 cameras, the lenses and the printer as well. So don't forget the printer.
Oh, and the printer. Don't forget about the printer.
Yeah. So we have great cameras and lenses to get amazing stills and video. And then you have the printer to actually print them. So
absolutely.
All great products, all working together.
So before we get started, the other person that's joining us from Canon is Barry, who is hanging about in the YouTube chat, answering questions. So you may have seen some questions from Barry Griffin there. He works for Canon, so he can help answer any questions. We will, of course, be bringing up questions on the stream as well and talking about them in a bit more detail than him answering them there in the questions, but that will be very useful for nice quick answers. So thank you very much, Barry, for all of your support. And also it's worth pointing out that I don't know if you've noticed anymore, but I'm not in my house anymore. I'm now back in the office. So we've got a new setup here. I'm not mixing anymore. I've got my colleague Dan sitting over there doing the hard work now for me. So if there are any technical problems, please do let us know. We've obviously had to change the entire setup to come in here, and some things still aren't exactly how we would like them. So we're working on it over the next couple of weeks. So if you've got any technical problems, please just let me know about the stream and we will try and deal with them as we go along. But let's not waste any more time, Mehdia, shall we? Let's dive straight into the PowerPoint.
Okay, so let's start.
Briefly go through what's new.
Okay, so 2018 in September, we introduced the EOS R system. That was, for us, it was, again, at the time, it was probably the second biggest launch we had after the introducing the EOS range in 1987, but this is now an even bigger one. And the key features of the actual system with the EOS R system are obviously the large mount diameter. Large diameter mount. So we do have a larger mount on the camera. We have that short back focus distance. So the flange distance, you're looking at 20 millimeters. That basically the 2 of them combined, they give flexibility when it comes to creating amazing optics, so lens design, in terms of the quality of the lenses as well as the size of the lenses. The communication system, so the 12-pin communication system, which is an improvement from what we have on our DSLRs. That means fast communication between the body and the lens. Again, that was one of the reasons why now we have the IBIS, or in-body image stabilizer, and then the improvements with the autofocus. And then there is also that adaptability. So we have over 100 lenses, EF and EFS lenses, and yes, we've got now with the latest addition in terms of lenses, we have 15 lenses and then 2 extenders when it comes to the RF lenses. But there are also obviously adapters that you can use. One of the adapters that you mentioned that there is a promotion on. So getting the R5 or the R6, you can still use the adapter and use the EF or EFS lenses with them. So great. Looking at the...
This is what the family looks like, right? Nice little family portrait for everyone.
So EOS range, so EOS R range at the moment. So now we have the RP, so that's the entry level. They're all obviously full frame cameras, starting with the RP and then going up to the EOS R that everyone now is familiar with, and then the EOS RA. So that's the one for the EOS R for the astrophotography, and then sitting at the top of the EOS R, you have the R6, and then right at the top of the whole family, so that's the head of the family, is the R5.
The one in charge.
The one in charge. So with the R5, the two cameras have loads of features in common.
And I think this is a really important slide, because I think some of the features that I'm actually the most excited about are the ones which are shared across both cameras. Things like in-body IIS, the 20 frames a second electronic shutter stills, the new autofocus, there's so much going on here that is exactly the same on both cameras. Yeah.
So both cameras benefit from Digic X processor. So that's our fastest processor we first introduced with the 1DX Mark III. This is basically the brain of the camera that actually allowed it to record the 8K RAW, the 4K at 120 frames, and obviously doing the 20 frames per second when it comes to still shooting, even at 45 million pixels with the R5, and also obviously improving in the autofocus. As we will see once we talk about both of them. But as I said, both of them benefit from dual pixel CMOS AF2. So the AF area increased. You're looking at approximately about 100% coverage when it comes to the frame. More AF zones as well in comparison. I mean, both cameras have over 1,000 AF areas that the camera can actually pick up from. If we compare it to the EOS R had 143, so you can see the difference. There is also a significant improvement when it comes to eye tracking. So even with the face turning about 60 degrees to the right or to the left, the camera is still capable of actually picking that. Head detection, so if you're walking away from the camera can still track that person.
This
is
and animal
brilliant. Tracking, obviously.
Yeah, I need to test the animal tracking properly. I did a quick little test with my cat at home when I had access to the camera, but I need to do a proper test on that. But the face tracking is incredible. We played with that a lot. And it's just the simple thing about recognizing the entire head when you turn the camera from away from the camera. Just that alone makes it such a more reliable system for uncontrolled situations, an event or anything like that. It's so important. You almost don't realize how important it is till you turn it on and actually use it, that it recognizes the entire head once it loses a face.
Yeah, even for example, one of our ambassadors who actually tested the camera shoots sports, and so for like people with a helmet, for example, the camera can still track that, which before that wasn't possible because the camera couldn't obviously get the face. So we would track it with just your typical single point or standard AF selection, but not the head. Whereas now it can actually. So someone with a helmet, the camera will still be able to actually track the head. which is amazing, and that's
amazing.
applicable to whether you shoot in stills or video. So
no, it's absolutely amazing. And do you think that there is, I just find it so interesting that this is not new features being added to dual pixel, that you're actually calling it dual pixel CMOS AF2. Do you think there's just a overall improvement in the normal, the ordinary, the stuff that it was already good at? Do you think that's got better? Or is it just the addition of these new features that has meant that it's the market?
as I mentioned earlier, so the AF area has actually gone bigger. So if we go back again, it's easier to compare it to the EOS R. You were getting roughly in the automatic selection, you're getting roughly about 88% by 100%. So with this, when we're talking approximately 100% horizontally and 100% vertically, you already got a lot more room to work with. So you're not worried about framing your shot closer to the edges. And that would
absolutely.
that will add a great benefit to, as I said, again, stills or videographers. Plus, obviously, as I said, the added bonus of the improved eye tracking and then the animal tracking as well.
And I assume the amount of focus points will have a bearing for video as well, because it's a bit, it's a bit like 8-bit versus 10-bit. The more gradations and fine information that an autofocus system has to work with, the better it's going to be. It's got more points of reference. So I assume that I'm really looking forward to doing some more tests on it, because from what I've seen so far, it is, takes an already good system and makes it very good.
Yeah, I mean, animal tracking in particular, I haven't tested it much because I don't have a pet, but a colleague of mine did. Tested it with his cat, and then he went out and tested it with everything possible, basically in the animal that you could find. And it was really good.
I've got a colleague who takes a lot of bird photography, and I just want to give the camera to him for a couple of days and say, look, go out. Go pick your long tele lenses and see what it's like with actual proper birds and owls and stuff like that, because that I think is fascinating.
Yeah, so at the moment, obviously, we're saying dogs, cats and birds, but it is, I mean, the more we're testing it, we're finding that it's actually picking up on the eyes of other animals, but the ones that we've tested it fully are the three we've mentioned. But yeah, birds in fly, again, that will make a massive difference. Again, that's been tested by loads of our ambassadors, and they did actually say that the years that it took them to learn how to actually perfect a shot with a DSLR, and then you get a mirrorless, that actually makes it a lot easier. It's amazing, isn't it? But annoying for obviously a few people.
Well, yeah, I think most people are okay with anything that makes their life a little bit easier, particularly with video, because for video for wildlife, things like that, it's so much harder than stills. Well, not harder, they're very different, they're different skill sets, but with the autofocus performance, I mean, you've got to keep that sustained autofocus performance, and you might only have a very short window where the bird is doing something interesting. And so I think autofocus for video in wildlife is going to be so much harder than autofocus for stills. A lot of the talent with stills comes from the moment, picking the right moment to press that shutter.
But even the benefit, obviously, because now we're looking at higher resolution, so we're not just talking about full HD. We're talking about 4K. We're talking now with the R5 about 8K, and being able to rely on the autofocus, know that whatever you have, but it's a person or an animal or your subject is in focus, it's taking the pressure off as well.
Absolutely. Right, so let's move on to talk about the R5, shall we? So again, let's assume that most people know quite a lot about these cameras already. But
I mean, I just
briefly,
put a couple of slides, for stills.
I think you've done a really good job here of separating into stills features, video features. I think that makes it really clear. So let's go through some of the key stills features.
Looking at the R5, for those who actually want to use it as a stills camera, you've got 45 million pixel CMOS sensor, so great resolution if you want to have flexibility to print obviously larger, cropping as well. The in-body IS, again, that will allow you to shoot with slower shutter speed, hence lower your ISO as well. Giving you a lot more flexibility. The ISO range is great. So you're looking between 100 to 51,200, but you can actually expand it and go over, to 102,400 if you really need to. 12 frames per second. And if that's not fast enough, you do have the electronic shutter or silent shutter that will allow you to take up to 20 frames per second. The amazing viewfinder. I think everyone needs to test the viewfinder of the R5. The resolution, so 5.76 million dot AVF, and with a refresh rate of up to 120 frames. So that's double what everyone is used to for those who actually use the EOS R, for example. That was 60 frames per second. So this is great. Dual pixel RAW. We first introduced that with the 5D 4, and then we added it with to the EOS R. Now the R5 has this, so not the R6. This gives you a little bit of flexibility when it comes to shifting point of sharpness, especially for portraits, bokeh shift, and then correcting ghosting. But they've added a portrait relighting that you can actually do on camera, and even bringing more details when you're shooting landscape. So you can actually push the contrast a little bit higher as well. Again, that can be done on camera. Improvement on dual pixel CMOS AF, as I mentioned. So autofocus, eye tracking has been improved. So even if your head is turned 60 degrees to the right or to the left, the camera is still capable of actually tracking that person. What else do I have on there? You took the slide away. Yeah, so focus.
Dan, you're messing with Mehdia.
To be honest, there is a lot. I could have gone a lot longer than just what I have on this slide. Focusing in low light, so the camera can focus down to -6 EV, which is amazing. I mean,
is that the same as the EOS R could?
Yes.
That's the same level, which, considering it's such a high megapixel sensor, is impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it will focus in situations that us as humans, basically, our eyes won't be able to actually figure out what the subject is. The camera is capable to pick up on that and focus. And then obviously, as I mentioned, the AF area has increased. So you are now looking at approximately 100% of the frame, which is great.
I mean, it is a absolute monster for still photography, like 45 megapixels at 20 frames a second with like really fast and reliable autofocus is just, it's going to change the way that Canon stills photographers work. I think it's absolutely insane. But we're primarily interested in video, so let's have a chat about the video features.
Okay, so video, we're looking at 8K. So with 8K, you have the up to 30 12-bit when shooting RAW, and then you have the 8K in MP4 as well. So you have 8K DCI and UHD in all-I or IPB, 24 or 25 frames, or 24 and 30, depending on whether you're NTSC or PAL. 4K, you have that flexibility of shooting up to 120, which is crazy, and that's with autofocus as well and tracking. Oversampling, so there are two kind of sampling options on this camera. So we do have the 4K HQ, which is an option that you need to go through the menu to enable. That will allow you to shoot 4K up to 30, and this 4K is oversampled from 8.2K.
So I think this is something that people have missed a lot, where you've got two 4K modes. So say 4K 25p, you know, for us Brits over here, there's two ways that you can record that internally. Yes. Well, I guess three ways if you count the HDMI output.
And then if we talk about
if you count C-Log as well, there's also more. But in just normal 4K, there's normal 4K, and then there's 4K HQ, this oversampled mode, and they're two different things.
Yeah, so with the oversampled, obviously, you are benefiting from the resolution. It's similar. It works in exactly the same way that we do it with our cinema cameras. And it's very, obviously, people can see the advantage of oversampling, whether it's from an 8K or even the 5K. So if you're using the crop mode, so both camera, well, we're talking about the R5, so we'll get to the R6 later. There is a crop mode in the camera. So if you go into it, you will get a 1.6 crop. In this mode, the 4K you're actually getting is oversampled from 5.1K. So again, yes, you basically shooting at Super 35, but you are benefiting from a better than standard kind of 4K video.
There's going to be
with that,
lots of tests that need to be done once we get proper shooting samples as to what the image quality looks like in each of these different modes, which ones for which situation, which one's going to work out best for your work.
yeah,
Because
and
there's so many options here.
there are. I mean, luckily, as you've seen, obviously yourself, the menu is much easier. So the user interface, when
Yes.
it comes to selecting the resolution, frame rate, and compression, is a lot easier on the R5. So as I said, yeah, so you've got the 2 oversampling options. In body IS, that can make a massive difference. So you're looking up to 5 stops if just the body itself, and then combining it. So I think the bigger thing for us is actually combining the in body IS and then the lens IS as well together, to give you that pushing the IS up to 8 stops, for example. And what allowed us obviously to do that is the larger mount. We have quite a few lenses that have a larger image circle as well. So larger image circle means you will get more efficient or a higher, better performance when it comes to the IS as well. 28 to 70, which is probably one of my favorite RF lenses. That on an R5 or an R6, you get in 8 stops, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be questions about some of the IS stuff to address later, but since you brought it up, I think there's also a lot of confusion about this, and it's something that I'm still struggling to get my head around.
Okay,
where
go ahead.
you can have, say, so normally with a stabilized sensor, you would have say 5 stops of stabilization with just the sensor moving, and we've got that here.
Yeah.
But then you pair that with the IS that's in a lens to get more, and yet on your spec sheets, we've got 2 RF lenses, one the 24 to 70 f2.8, which has IS in it, and then the other one, the 28 to 70 f2, the beast of a lens, the really lovely one, but it doesn't have IS. And yet you're saying that both get 8 stops of image stabilization, which I'm still struggling to get my head around. How's that happening?
So depending whether you're shooting stills or video, the camera will correct 3 of the axes, and then the lens will correct the other 2 to make out the 5 axes when you're using an IS lens. That's how it works. So it's not combining the 2 together, and I think that's probably why obviously the value is not. So if the lens has 5 and the body has 5, you're not going to get a 10. It's because the 2 of them are actually kind of working together in terms of what they're correcting.
The 28 to 70 doesn't have any
Doesn't
IS.
have an IS, no. So that's taking full advantage, but it doesn't have the IS, but it does have a very large image circle. That's the advantage of that lens.
Yes, so this is something you tried to explain to me a couple of days ago, isn't it? Where the size of the image circle on the lens will change because the camera. I guess the way that I've got it in my head is that the camera, because it knows what that lens that's connected to is, it knows how big the image circle is, so therefore it knows how much it can move the sensor and how extreme it can be with the image stabilization. Do you think that's fair? Is that a fair? That's
a good explanation. So yes.
Okay, good. And Barry's there saying it's the size of the image circle as well. Okay, cool. So I must have had it okay in my head. Right, let's carry on, shall we? Anything else on this slide you want to talk about?
And then obviously the C-Log and HDR-PQ. So enabling one or the other, you will get the 422 10-bit. With both of them disabled, you are getting 4208-bit. But one or the other enabled, that's where you actually benefit from the 422 10-bit, which is great. And that's for internal recording as well as external recording. So
yeah, excellent.
Focus guide and manual focus speaker, and I think people now are probably used to it because we've had that in the EOS R. 1DX Mark III has that, and then the HDMI out, as we mentioned, so you get up to 4K up to 60. You can't record 8K externally. So
I'm keen to get on to questions, but we've still got a whole other camera to talk about because you announced so many things yesterday. But the R5 is such a headline attention grabbing product. It's hard to not talk for a long time on the R5 and almost forget about the R6 a little bit, because the R5 has so many things which are so new and so impressive that it just tends to just dominate the headlines. But the R6 is, if we pretend that the R5 doesn't exist, forget about the R5 and pretend all you were announcing today or yesterday was the R6, I think we would all still be sitting here thinking, this is a really good move from Canon.
A great camera,
absolutely. Yeah. It's brilliant. It's everything that we were sort of hoping that the EOS R, you know, the EOS R is a great camera, and I've really, really enjoyed using it for the last couple of years. And it's still a great choice if for budget reasons, if you can't step up to the R6. But pretty much everything that irritated me with that camera, because there were some things, the R6 has fixed it.
There is, I think, as I said, as I mentioned to you earlier before even the start of the live stream, is the R6 is great just because obviously we announced it at the same time as the R5.
Yeah.
I think obviously the R5 took all the attention. But whether people are actually looking for a camera for stills or for video, it is still a great camera to use. 20 million pixels. I mean, it's not, so for stills, obviously you've got 20 million pixels. It uses a similar sensor to the 1DX Mark III. It's not all about the megapixels. Not everyone needs 40 or 45 or 50 million pixels. 20 is good enough for quite a lot. You still have that flexibility to even crop if you need to. The camera also benefits, as we mentioned with the R5, from the onboard IS as well. 12 frames per second, so you can still shoot 12 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, or up to 20 with the silent shutter. The ISO performance is where this basically takes it up one level. Obviously, we are looking at both full frame sensors, but this has it having 20 million pixels rather than 45, so bigger pixels. So it does have the edge when it comes to high ISO performance. And you can see that with native ISO values. So just the standard ISO goes up to 102,400 before even expanding it, which is crazy.
So this is the bit which has the potential to take the R6 from being just simply a not quite as good R5 and actually elevate it to something where it stands by itself, because low light is something that people will choose a camera because it's better at that. You know, there's lots of industries like journalism and weddings where that is one of the most important features on a spec sheet. And I guess it's too early, isn't it, to talk about how this might compare to other cameras and all the rest of that. I don't believe you've actually had a chance to test this yourself, have you, Mehdia?
For us, compared to any other camera we have, if we're just talking Canon, it is definitely the best one. And that's with the values when shooting stills, and then in video as well, because it's when it comes to focusing in low light, you've got -6.5 EV. In video is -5. The R5, as we've seen, it's -6 in stills. You're looking at -4 in video. So the R6 does have the edge when it comes to that.
So, but by the best one from you guys, are you talking about stills cameras there, or are you including the cinema lineup in that?
No, I'm not bringing the cinema cameras into this.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. The best stills camera.
I guess it's good to clarify that as well. So. So if we're talking the stills cameras that we have with the video option, that is the one.
Cool. Okay.
Dual card slots.
I will probably be doing some comparisons against some of the Cinema EOS lineup, though. But
fine,
for everyone watching,
once
pretend Mehdia didn't hear that. But I am very curious to see.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah. The autofocus down to 6.5 EV does show that a little bit on this stills image side, doesn't it? How much better this might be in low light.
The viewfinder, even though it's the same resolution as the EOS R, is actually it does have a higher refresh rate as well. So that's another advantage for those actually that use the EOS R and they're comparing them.
Gotcha.
The 2-card slots as well. That, I mean, obviously it's more useful for stills photographers, but If you shoot into one card and then one is full, it can automatically switch to the second one, start recording. So you do have that benefit as well.
Okay, so let's talk about video.
Video. So the R6 can do 4K. The 4K you get, it's UHD 4K, and it is oversampled from 5.1K. So great quality 4K, and that's up to 60 with no issues. Full HD, you can push it and record up to 120 frames per second. With both 4K and Full HD, you are getting the taking advantage of dual pixel CMOS IF in terms of focusing, tracking, etc. As we mentioned with the EOS R, you do have C-Log and HDR-PQ. Again, that will give you the 422 10-bit if you're recording internally or if you're recording externally. In terms of compression, is IPB only with the R6. In-body IS, again, works in exactly the same way as with the R5. As I mentioned, dual pixel CMOS IF with the eye tracking, focus guide and manual focus speaking is there as well, and then time lapse. So time lapse is on both of them. You get 8K, 4K, and Full HD with the R5, and then just 4K and Full HD with the R6. So these are the kind of the key video spec. You also have, for the first time on both cameras, is zebra pattern as well. So I think videographers are used to it on video cameras, but first for our stills cameras with the video option, you do actually have the zebra pattern. That makes a again, that helps when it comes to monitoring your exposure. And you can customize a button.
Oh, you can put it on a button?
Yes.
What other assistant functions are there for video in these cameras? Because there's peaking, is that right?
Yeah, so you've got manual focus speaking and focus guide when it comes to the autofocus. And then, as I said, you have the zebra pattern to monitor exposure.
Sure. Okay. So there's no waveform. That's for the cinema lineup.
No, that we have on the
no false
cinema
color.
cameras,
That's for the cinema lineup. Yep. Cool. So I am very keen to move on to questions because there has been so many coming in. Thank you so much, everyone. Barry has been very busy, as has Dan sitting over there. So I've got a little curated list here. I think, though, I would lose the trust of every single person watching this by the look of the chat if I don't bring up overheating. So this is something that I've seen so much misinformation about, but it's not something that I think should be swept under the rug at all. This is in some modes, the R5 overheats. There are modes of the R5 where you are not going to shoot in those modes all day for professional work. You're just not, because of the overheating issues is going to stop that. I've seen lots of things out there, though, saying that this rules the camera off for professional work, which I just could not disagree more with.
Yeah,
there are so many modes here that are, this is still a better camera. Even with those overheating issues, there's the modes that don't overheat is still a better camera in terms of mirrorless cameras for video than potentially anything else out there on the market. It certainly gives everything else a good run for its money. So, Mehdia.
Yes.
Which modes on the R5, and we'll talk about the R5 first, then the R6, which modes on the R5 overheat?
So we're looking at, if you record in 8K, both in RAW or in MP4, there is the 20 minutes that basically we are quoting. So saying up to 20 minutes, I mean, you might get 19 minutes, for example, you might get 21 minutes. Because sometimes the more tests we do, we'll find different figures. But that's a kind of a guide number. If you look at it, you know what you're expecting. If the minute you start recording RAW, or you go into 8K DCI and you're recording, you know what to expect. You do get a warning on the screen roughly about 3 minutes before that the camera basically is gonna shut off. You do get that warning, and you don't lose your footage. So obviously that's not an issue. But as I said, we are looking at a very small camera that's actually doing quite a lot.
On that note,
Yes.
I went back and remembered the 8K. Do you remember, Mehdia, that you guys at trade shows for a while were showing off an 8K camera solution? And it was essentially a C300 Mark II that was heavily modified with big recorders on the back and all the rest of it. I think I've got a photo of it. Dan, can you bring up my laptop screen? So this is the 8K solution that you guys have been showing off for a couple of years now. And that's what 8K looks like in a video production world normally. So I just thought that was a really interesting point of reference when we're talking about the 8K modes in a camera the size of the R5. It's certainly something to keep in mind. It's a little bit smaller, hence the overheating issues.
Yeah, I mean, it is in a way, it's kind of probably, as much as I don't like saying that, it's managing the expectation. It's not the same size as a Cinema EOS camera, because we have all the cooling systems on the Cinema EOS cameras, but you see how big they are in comparison. So for looking at the size of the camera and what it's capable of doing, I still think it's great. Get in 20 minutes, continue shooting. I don't think it's massive that the fact that you stop in at 20 minutes. Looking at mirrorless cameras or stills cameras in general, when they shoot video, you have the limit anyway. So you are looking at 29 minutes, 59 seconds. So being able to record for 29 minutes, and we're talking 8K, I still think that is massive. And people shouldn't be worried about the overheating. I mean, there is an option in the camera for the overheating. It is enabled by default, but and what that does is it basically lowers the resolution of the display, because what I think we don't realize, even if the camera is sitting down, standby, not recording, it is still doing something. So there is still, the temperature is still increasing. If you have the camera in your hand, you're going through the menus, adjusting loads of things, or going through playing back videos, stills. The camera's temperature is going up. So because there is processing going on that obviously we're not paying attention to. So when you start recording, obviously the minute you start recording, you will get the time estimate on the screen. And as I said, it's mainly, so in 8K, you're looking at about 20 minutes. If you're recording 4K high frame rate, because again, there is that limitation in stills cameras of 29 minutes, 59 seconds. Shooting 4K at 120 frames, you get 7.5 minutes per clip, because 7.5 minutes recording is about half an hour when it comes to playback. So you can actually do 2 clips of that. So that's pretty much an hour of playback time, which again, it's great. When recording 4K 60, for example, without any crop, you will be getting roughly about 35 minutes, which is, so you will reach that limit of 29 minutes, 59 seconds, and then you record another 5 minutes, maybe even longer on top of that. If you're recording at the 4K crop, obviously you've got to remember that the 4K crop, you've got the oversampling, so the 5.1K. So 4K 60 in crop mode, you get 25 minutes. But if you record in 4K 30, the camera is not limited by the overheating. So once this basically limit at some point, because as I said, we've been told that it will be lifted at some point. Once that's lifted, it shouldn't be an issue to record 4K 30, as long as you have a card, I guess, large enough, and the camera is powered from the mains, it shouldn't be an issue.
So to clarify, the 2 4K 30 or 4K 25 modes, or 24
8K, you mean?
That we've, 4K.
Oh, 4K.
The 2 modes, the HQ mode and then the normal mode that we talked about earlier. The 4K HQ mode is going to overheat. The 4K normal mode is not. No. You're not going to see any people shooting anywhere around the world. It's going to be just the same as all the normal Canon cameras that we're used to. You're going to be able to use it without worrying about overheating, without even having to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you get, as I said, with the 4K HQ, you get in that 30 minutes, which I still think, to be honest, for to be recording 30 minutes non-stop, it's already great. And we need to remember that the camera is oversampling from 8K. So there is a lot of processing actually going on. But yeah, 4K 30 with HQ disabled, As I said, as long as you have a card big enough, it won't be an issue.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. The other thing I guess is relevant on that point is the 4K HQ versus the normal 4K. I think because the 4K HQ exists, it might be very tempting for people to think that the 4K without that, you're sort of compromising, so that you have to avoid the overheating. Go, oh, I'm compromising. The 4K normal mode is actually really good.
Yeah.
You know, it is. We did some very quick tests with it side by side with the EOS R, and it looks to me at first glance the same as the 4K in the the EOS R. Too many cameras with two similar names. Getting my brain muddled. Do you know what method the camera is using to get to that normal HQ? So if the HQ mode is using oversampling from the 8K, but the normal 4K is using its full sensor, how's it getting there?
That's one thing we're waiting on confirmation. So we don't have that information at the moment. The sooner we know, well, obviously you guys know, and then you can put it on your website. Cool. And as I said, yeah, at the moment we don't have that information, but we should have that hopefully soon.
I mean, in my quick little tests, I couldn't see any nastiness. I couldn't see any lines, jaggediness, some aliasing, moire, things like that. Nothing reared its ugly head. So that is a very, very good sign. And of course, a lot of the other cameras that have done 4K haven't advertised oversampling and all the rest of it, and they've always been pretty good. So I think we can be very confident about the performance of the normal 4K modes, and then just know that we've got better modes that we can. You know, I think most people, in terms of this overheating workflow, the way I see most people using the R5 is in that normal 4K 25 frames a second mode, and then every now and again jumping into 4K 120 frames a second for a slow-mo shot. Or every now and again turning on the 4K HQ or the 8K recording, just because they're doing a couple of shots which are really wide. You know, they're doing that big wide establishing. They've climbed up to the top of a mountain, and they just want to get that couple of shots where it's the big vista, it's in front of them. And then they'll kind of change back to the normal mode when they start doing the close-ups of people and things like that.
And
for
then
me, I think that makes the most sense. Sorry.
For the EOS R for the R5, and that obviously applies to the R6 as well. If you're just happy with 4K, but you want to record, say, 4K 60, and you don't really want to have to stop after, I don't know, half 35 minutes, there is the external recording option. So with the R5, you can record externally. With both of them, you can just record externally rather than internally. So you do have that option as well. And with that, if the camera is powered up from the mains, and then you have a large storage with your external recorder, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
So that's another thing as well to keep in mind.
So that's the R5. The R6. Now, I had it in my head after yesterday's launch that the R6 had no overheating issues at all. From our brief little chat before this started, it said that there were some. Let's just go over some of what overheating looks like with the R6, shall we?
So when you're recording 4K 60, because obviously it is oversampled, you are looking to get around 30 minutes. Obviously, as I said, these are all just guides depending on the conditions and where you are and how long you've been using the camera before recording. So yeah, you're looking about half an hour for 4K 60. And as I said, this 4K is oversampled from 5.1K. So there is a lot of data that we're talking about. 4K 30, again, because it's oversampled, it's 40 minutes, which is still great. And then when it comes to crop mode, so when you're recording 4K 60 in crop, it's 45 minutes. So in crop mode, 30 standard, no limit at all. So, well, apart from the limit on the camera, which is 29 minutes, 59 seconds.
Gotcha. Okay. So let me know out there if there's anything to do with overheating that I haven't asked Mehdia and that we haven't addressed. I don't want this to be an issue that we're accused of shying away from. I think it's great that Canon have been so open about this and given us actual information about it. You know, you can expect this performance, you can expect this performance, because we have seen it before where people have released cameras and we've just started using
by
them
surprise.
and gone, hang on, I'm halfway through my pay job and my new camera is overheating on me. So it is very good that you guys are being open, and I do really appreciate that, and I'm sure the people watching do as well. But if anyone out there has any things that you think we haven't addressed, please let us know. So let's move on to some other bits and bobs, because there's a whole load of things that we're 45 minutes through the stream and we haven't spoken about. There's so much to talk about. So does the R6 oversample the entire sensor in 1080p? That's a question from C. Miller. Yeah, what happens in 1080p?
Yeah, that's the thing. Because with Cinema EOS, it kind of does both. But what we know at the moment, and that applies to the R5 with the 6, the oversampling is only 5.1K down to 4K. We haven't been told that the full HD is oversampled, so we don't have that information. So,
okay.
But again, we will check and let you guys know.
Cool. Another question from C. Miller. Any possibility of seeing 1080p 120 frames a second on the R5? He mainly shoots in 1080p and he's having trouble deciding between the R5 and the R6. So yeah, this is a bit of a strange thing, isn't it? The specs now at launch is that the R5 can do 4K 120 frames a second, but 1080 up to 60, whereas the R6 can do 1080 up to 120. Yeah.
It has been fed back because obviously we've had a large number of ambassadors using the camera for the last few months.
Right.
So it has been fed back and it is under consideration. So it is something that I think the good thing about both actually the R5 and the R6 is any feedback that actually we get, and it seems to be we're getting loads of kind of requests on the video side more than than stills. If it is something that it is doable and is not going to affect the performance of the camera, it shouldn't be a problem. But as I said, for the full HD high frame rate, so up to 120 in the R5, it is under consideration. So just have to wait and see.
Cool. A couple more things on overheating have just come in after my ask about any further questions we haven't addressed. James Jackson Films is asking, if you're recording externally in the 4K HQ mode, will you come across overheating issues? And that is a very good question. Do we know that, Mehdia?
So if you're recording externally, there is no overheating issue.
Okay.
One thing that we're not sure, which obviously we've discussed earlier, is I'm not sure about the 4K HQ being recorded externally, because we've been told it's 4K up to, as I said, 60. I'm not sure about the oversampling for the external recording, but again, this is hopefully something that we can get confirmed and share with you guys as soon as possible.
So just for the people watching, me and Mehdia have got a little back and forth discussion going on, because in some of my tests with the pre-production sample that I had, basically we did some tests with the HDMI output and what it looked like recording onto an Atomos Ninja 5, and we tested in normal 4K mode. Yep, everything's good, everything's gravy. We then put it into 4K HQ mode and everything was still good, but we saw a big difference. And we said that to Mehdia and she was quite surprised, thinking, and I've been told by Canon that, is this fair, Mehdia, that there shouldn't have been a difference there between normal 4K and 4K HQ mode, that you hadn't thought that it would affect the HDMI output. So there's a few things there to clarify once we get final models, I think.
That's true, because I think at the moment it's quite, on the still side it's probably easier, but on the video side, especially because the pre-production samples we received very limited. So obviously any test we do, you can't take it for granted. And we are basically going by the information we've received so far. So there was no mention of high quality, but as I said, it's definitely something that we will check and let you guys know. So we'll let ProAV know, and then it will go online as well. So
okay, so let's move on. Does the R5 have the ability to turn on a Super 35 crop mode if you want to, says Darlington Jones Imagery? Yes, Yep.
There, you've got the crop mode, yeah.
And it's a 1.6 mode.
Yeah, it's 1.6. Yeah.
Okay.
It's basically to match our APS-C cameras. Plus, if you put an EFS lens as well, so that's effectively you are enabling the crop mode as well. So.
Okay. Jeffrey Fleming is asking, will the low light performance be compromised because of the 45 megapixel sensor on the R5? Which is a very valid question.
I mean, keeping in mind, if we look at, obviously, the R5 has 45 million pixels. If we compare it to the 5D4, the EOS R, they're both around 30 million pixels. You would expect the R5 not to be as good in low light than the other two because you've got more megapixels on there. But it's actually better than both cameras. You are looking probably about around the stop better. Which is great. Keeping in mind, push the megapixels higher, and you're still getting better ISO performance. Obviously,
so that's better than which camera? Sorry, I tuned out when you mentioned which cameras.
So the EOS R is 30 million pixels. 5D4 is 30 million pixels. So you are looking roughly around the stop better.
Excellent. So that could be this new sensor. It could be the new processors, things like that. It's
the new sensor as well as the new processor as well. So yeah.
Great.
Obviously, with the R6, it's a different story. So the R6 does have a lot less pixels.
Yeah.
So that does have the edge.
I'm very excited to see how good in low light the R6 could be. But yeah, that's fantastic news on the R5 that it should be better performance in low light than the EOS R or the 5D Mark IV, because I think that was something that I had thought. The minute 8K gets mentioned, you go, okay, they must be very small pixels. That's not going to go great in low light. So that's really good news. Very pleased to hear that. Okay, on the R6, is there any sort of cropping in 4K? If so, what frame rates have what? Says Charlie Lane. Yes, this is something I've seen a lot. Is when you're just in normal 4K on the R6, is it using the full sensor or does it crop in a bit?
There is a tiny crop, so you get basically 94%
right
horizontally. So it's 1.06 crop, which is hardly worth mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is UHD. That's the other thing, is because it's UHD, so there is that. But yeah,
yes.
It's nowhere near the crop that probably. I think people were more concerned about the crop that they've seen obviously with the EOS R, and they're thinking it's probably the same thing, but it's not. They said it is hardly noticeable on the R6. But there is, on top of that, there is the actual crop mode, like with the R5. If you want to go into that, you can, and that will be the 1.6 crop.
Okay, so yeah, that's on the R6 as well as on the R5.
Yeah.
And something that I think a lot of people might have missed, you mentioned it just very briefly there, is that the R6 is a UHD camera, whereas the R5, you could choose between DCI resolutions or for UHD.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay, so Felipe is saying, sorry if I just horrendously mispronounced your name there, is saying, why no 4K RAW in the R5, but 8K RAW in the R5? And to add to this, why is there then no option to crop in on the sensor when shooting RAW, crop into that 8K to get 4K?
Again, I believe the way the RAW is the 8K RAW is recorded, I think there is no easier way without affecting, again, the camera performance. This is what we have, the information we have at the moment. As I said, probably in the next couple of weeks, we might hear more, but the way the RAW is recorded, 8K RAW is recorded, at the moment is not possible for obviously the camera to do 4K RAW. I mean, we had similar thing with the 1DX Mark III. I don't know if anyone remembers the 1DX Mark III, even though it's not that old.
It's a very nice camera.
Because that has the 5.5K RAW, but there wasn't a 4K RAW on it either.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the way, obviously, as I said, the RAW is recorded. It might not be the easiest option, especially in terms of the power that the camera needs to go down to the 4K. Otherwise, it would have been done. But again, we will feed it back, and all we can do is just wait and see what happens.
Yep. We're trying to get some comments going on. Like Peter just says, "Shut up and take my money in August for an R6." So, Peter Demetrius, you've made up your mind then, have you? That sounds fairly conclusive. Okay, so the other questions that I'm seeing come up again and again are to do with two things. One is all-eye on the R6, because at the moment it's IPP only, apart from in time-lapse where you can get some all-eye. Any word on that, Mehdia?
Again, at the moment, we don't know, but it has been fed back. We will feed back. But obviously we will give more feedback, and if it is possible for the camera to do it, then I guess maybe a firmware update or something will sort it, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Well,
I mean, as I
it
said,
all comes down to can the camera manage it? Because
what we need to remember with the R6 is the camera by default is oversampling, so that 4K is being oversampled, and if we think about it, 4K at the moment, 4K 60p with the oversampling, and we're looking at IPB, you're looking at 30 minutes. Just think about if it was all eye, what would happen? So there are considerations, but as I said, I can't say no or a yes. But if it is possible, I'm sure we will see it in the future. So.
Sure. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of is the dual card slots on the R5 and the R6. So for stills, great. You know, you can shoot video to one card, stills to another. You can shoot stills to both cards. You can shoot RAW to one, JPEG to another. All the normal stills side of things for dual card slots. Can't help but feel that video guys are being a little bit left out with some of the dual recording functionality. What can we do with dual card slots now that we finally have them?
At the moment, with the R5, there is an option in the menu that will allow you to record 8K RAW and 4K MP4. So 8K RAW goes into the CF Express, and the MP4 4K will go into the SD card, so like a proxy type. That is the only time where you can actually record to both cards at the same time. There is the auto switch on both, so one card is full, it will jump into the other. Obviously with the R5, it depends on what you're recording, because there are certain resolutions that can't be recorded into an SD card. You'll need a CF Express with that. But with the R6, if one card is full, the camera can jump and start recording video into the second one. It has been fed back again, the fact that it doesn't do simultaneous recording. We will send even more feedback to Canon Inc. And wait and see if it is doable. If it's an easy fix like with the firmware or something, then hopefully that's something they will add to both cameras.
I think, to clarify, I do think relay recording is, if anything, the more important of the two. It's the one that I personally use the most, where it fills up one card then moves to another, so that I don't have to worry about, oh, this important moment is happening and my card's full, what do I do? But there are certainly situations where something is not repeatable and all the rest of it, where you just really want to protect against a corrupted card, something like that, and being able to simultaneous record is hugely beneficial. So if it is possible to add, I think it would be a very, very welcome feature. But I mean, I'm still happy to have two card slots rather than one. So
that's the thing. With the R5, you do have that option of when recording internally, you can still record externally at the same time. So that, I guess, helps. Obviously with the R6, that's not an option. So with the R6, when it comes to external recording, you can either do internal recording or external recording, so you can't do both at the same time.
Okay, so while we wrap up, we'll answer a couple more questions, but one thing I'm really curious about for everyone watching, let us know in the chat there, if you let's say hypothetically, had decided you were going to buy one of these two cameras right now. Your current camera stopped working. You were going to buy one of these two. Forget everything else on the market exists. Which one would you go for? Would you go for the R5 at the extra money, or would you go for the R6? I'm very curious to see what people think there. Is the 8K and the high frame rate 4K and all the rest of it, even despite the overheating, worth the extra money on the R5 to you? Does that draw you towards the R5, or are you going for the R6 just for simplicity's sake, if you like? Let me know, because I'm very, very curious about that.
One
what
of
do you
each,
think
maybe.
people are? One of each. That's what you think people should go for, is it, Mehdia? One of each. What a surprise.
Well, I think my way of thinking is if anyone is using a C500 or a C300, that's another camera. One or the other can actually work nicely with them.
Well, that's actually a very interesting thing to talk over for the end of the stream. Is obviously there are a whole load of people that are very excited about these cameras, because they mainly live in the mirrorless world. They're used to the EOS R, they're used to Sony's A7s, the GH5, cameras like that, and they like the small cameras. They want to stay with the small cameras. Now these are just very powerful small cameras. Great. There's also a whole load of people watching, and I think the majority of our target customers would fall into this category, where they are cinema EOS cameras customers already. They have a C300, they have a C200, they have a C100, a C500, or they own cameras from other brands, so an FS7, cameras like that. And then they want one of these cameras as a B camera. Now, which one do you think is the better B camera for those types of customers? Because I'm really in two minds.
I mean, I would say the R5, but then again, probably the R5, because of everything else that it does. I mean, the internal and external recording at the same time, that might be a good thing that probably people would want. The fact that you can do a proxy as well. But I can't see it, to be honest. One or the other can do it, but I think depending on what they really need in a big camera, then probably the R5 is more likely to be used as a B camera. But you can basically use one or the other. You do have that flexibility, as I said, with C-Log, and then obviously mixing the footage, so it shouldn't be an issue with either of them.
So C-Log is going to match very well, so that should be great. If you're doing multi-camera work, you should be able to put most of the... I know the C200 has C-Log. Does the C300 Mark III and the C500 have the original C-Log? I don't think it does it?
Well,
it's just 2 and 3.
That's actually quite different. No, it's not the standard kind of C-Log.
No. But the C200 does, I believe.
C200 has the standard and 3, and then you get the 2 via the Canon CRJ.
So if you've got a C200, you can put both into the C-Log 1, and then you are working with the same log format really easy. If you've got a C300 Mark III or C500, you shoot in probably C-Log 3, I think would match better. The original C-Log 1 would be my default starting point.
I think that's probably the way.
But my thoughts on some of the B camera stuff, the R5 is going to be a fantastic camera, but the overheating issues, I think, become a lot less relevant when you're using it as a B camera than when you're using it as an A camera. And I suppose that does depend how you use your B camera. If it's just an entire unit shooting for a while at the same time, then that's different. If it's the sort of B camera work where you're mainly shooting on the A camera, but then you just want to run off and grab some quick B-roll with the small camera, and that's something these cameras are going to be brilliant at because of the autofocus and the image stabilization, particularly. Shooting like this or handheld with a flip out screen, you're going to be able to work really quickly. And in that sort of environment, how often are you shooting for the length of time where the overheating issues are going to become a problem? Probably not very often. You're going to do a quick little 15 minutes of shots, then you're going to go back to the A camera for a bit, then another quick 15 shots, then go back to the A camera. So I think the overheating becomes a lot less relevant, really. It won't bother you anywhere near as much. But then the R6 has a lot of appeal too because of the low light. Because now all of a sudden, this could be a camera that is the convenient versus the quality of the Cinema EOS. So say you've got a C300 Mark III, for example, that's your quality, that's your production workhorse. But then if for whatever reason you need to shoot in a more unpredictable environment than that can handle, or if you need to work really quickly or something like that, you've then got the R6, which is a tiny little camera which can handle pretty much anything that you throw at it, that you can just pick up out the bag and go, okay, it doesn't matter what my client throws at me. Between these two cameras, I know I can handle it.
And plus, what I want to add is, obviously, I imagine loads of people will be mainly recording 4K. So even as a B camera being in the R5 or the R6, if you're recording externally, you're kind of bypassing that anyway. So it's not an issue if you send the footage directly into like an Atmos, for example. So you don't have to worry about that. So
Brandon says, hey, don't call my pre-ordered R6 a B camera. Don't worry, for a lot of people, this is a fantastic A camera as well. But if you own a C300 Mark III, you know, this isn't going to become your A camera. That is an incredibly good camera as well. Don't worry, it's still a very good A camera. Don't worry.
There's a long list. I mean, B is second.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just looking back through the things. There's a lot of love out there for both cameras. I think there is. It's very interesting. R5, but don't tell my wife. I won't read out who said it, just in case.
The wife is watching as well.
Exactly, you never know. Right. Okay, I think that is probably enough there. I'm sure there's so many questions that we haven't had a chance to answer. So hopefully I can see that Barry has been an absolute trooper going through and answering people's questions. But I do think it has been just an overwhelming amount of questions. So I'm sure there are lots of people out there that haven't had their question answered. And I am very sorry for that. If there's something glaring that you really want us to address, leave it as a comment on either our R5 and R6 video that we've done, a separate video, or on this stream, whether that's on YouTube or Facebook, and I will make sure to go through those and answer as many questions as we possibly can. And if I can't answer them, I'll chuck them over to Mehdia and Barry and the Canon team to see if they can. So don't worry. Even if we haven't got time to answer it today, I'm sure we will get round to it. And of course, if you are looking at buying one of these two cameras for yourself, we just let us know at ProV. We've got the 0% finance offer, the free mount adapter. There's lots of offers there that we can help guide you through and get you on the pre-order list. So please do get in touch with the sales team. Okay. Thank you so much for all your help, guidance, advice, technical expertise, Mehdia. It's been very useful.
I've actually enjoyed the session, so thanks to everyone for joining us as well.
I'm surprised, Mehdia.
No, I enjoyed it. It's been great. And I mean, we do understand that obviously sometimes when you go into different websites and you get just the spec, it's not the easiest thing to digest. So we hope that obviously managed to answer most of your questions with today, and hopefully we'll see you in the future as well.
Absolutely. There will be lots more content coming on the R5 and R6 as soon as I can get my hands on a sample that is from the final production batch and that I can show footage from and all the rest of it. Don't worry, I will be making a lot of content on both cameras because I am very excited to see what they can do. But yeah, thank you so much, Mehdia. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you very soon.
Bye, everyone.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. The MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.